I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. You know that thing you've been thinking about doing? Yeah, that one. Why not now? Have you ever actually taken the time to ask yourself, what's stopping me? Let's talk it through. This is your chance to give that idea the attention it deserves and take action. Each episode, I have a chat with a fascinating person, from entrepreneurs to athletes, celebrities, my parents, rocket scientists, and all walks of life. We talk through a critical time when they've asked themselves, why not now? We dissect that day or even that moment, step by step. Imagine Dragons frontman and lead vocalist Dan Reynolds is on the show today. Their recent album, Evolve, went gold in less than a month, and it continues to rise as they tour the globe. The band has sold more than 9 million albums and 27 million singles worldwide. They're kind of a big deal, but they haven't always been.
The name Imagine Dragons now it sounds like a band name, but let me just tell you, before your band is famous, what your band name is, it didn't sound like a cool band name for sure. And there were there were a lot of people who doubted, the band in the beginning.
In this episode, you'll learn some new things about Dan and the band that you might not know. From lighthearted fun facts.
I just was not enjoying any of my classes in school, other than like my PE classes, and I was in an aerobics class. I actually really loved aerobics. It was amazing.
To heavier topics, like a recent Why Not Now realization and moment.
One of the big realizations that I've had in the last couple of years is that sometimes if you are quiet about something or you are a pacifist about something, you actually are an activist for maybe something that you aren't.
Dan shares things in this show that he hasn't talked about publicly before. If you want a glimpse behind the curtains and get to know the down-to-earth person behind the rock star, you're in for a treat. Before we get started, let me fill you in on something that's been a lifesaver. It's called Design Pickle. Get it? You're in a pickle because you need a design ASAP, but you don't have the time or maybe even the skill to do it yourself. With Design Pickle, you pay a flat rate monthly fee of $370, and you're given a dedicated designer for all of your needs. And the first 14 days are risk-free. You get a full refund if you cancel in the first 2 weeks. For me, the process has been painless and ego-free. In fact, the Why Not Now posts you're seeing on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and everywhere else were created from my buddies at Design Pickle. I found I was spending so much time resizing images and trying to design things on my own. I didn't have the budget to hire a design firm or an agency, yet it was becoming too expensive for me to budget my own time. I'm now on a first-name basis with my designer. She's learned my style and we're in a groove. Why Not Now listeners get 30% off their first month. You can go to designpickle.com/why not now to redeem the offer. You will also see a how to brand like a band downloadable guide with 8 actions you can apply to improve your brand. It's a great solution for entrepreneurs. A mentor once said to me, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Do what you're uniquely qualified to do. Design Pickle helps me do just that. Dan, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I don't know if you can hear my baby screaming in the background, but hopefully it's not too loud.
That's okay. It adds dimension. And congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Gia and Coco. Is that correct?
Gia and Coco. They're twins, fraternal, 4 months old. And then I have a 4-year-old daughter as well. So lots of girls, and it's wonderful.
Absolutely. I've been watching videos of Arrow on YouTube that you've shot, and her outlook on politics, and some you have a pretty wise girl right there. She's something else. I couldn't believe how articulate she is for, at the time, I think you shot the video at barely 4 years old. So props to you.
Yeah, she's amazing. I think every single day I'm pretty astounded by her, just, I don't know, her understanding of the world and her outlook. And I don't take credit for it. I swear she was just born that way. And I feel like she's teaching me.
Wow. Well, she was teaching me earlier too. So let's hop right in. And in the spirit of why not now, can you share a time when you had to ask yourself that question, and you were making a big decision? And we'll talk it through and dissect it a bit.
Yeah, man. I've been thinking a lot about that. There's definitely been quite a few why not now moments in my life. Probably the most significant why not now moments for me were one when I was 19 years old. I went on a mission for the Mormon church. That was a very huge decision, and there was a lot that went into that. Another why not now moment for me, I'll give you a few and then you tell me where you want to dive.
Okay.
Was dropping out of college to pursue Imagine Dragons and to start the band. That was probably the most life-changing why not now moment, I would say. And then a current why not now moment for me that I'm involved in is I'm making a documentary about the LGBTQ community, specifically in Utah, and some of the challenges that can come with being raised within Orthodox religion and being LGBTQ. So those are three pretty significant why not now moments for me.
Yeah, maybe starting with that moment when you were figuring out whether or not to pursue music, and you were in college at BYU. And what was that phase like when you were trying to make the decision?
That was a really difficult decision for me because even though I'd done music my entire life, I never had viewed it as a viable occupation, a viable, reliable pursuit. I grew up in a very academic home. I have 8 boys, 1 girl in our family. My mom and dad were, academics were everything. Just to give you an idea, I think every single brother in front of me was a valedictorian with the exception of 1 or 2 maybe, and it was just a couple B's or something. It was school was everything. I was always afraid to bring home my report card for fear of getting a bad grade. And in talking with my parents, it was always kind of like, are you going to be a doctor or a lawyer? Really, where my dad was an attorney. And so I think that, I don't know, music never seemed like, even art. I just didn't grow up in a world where art was perceived to be an occupation, really. And as I grew older, obviously, I formed my views on that. But, and I don't want to say my parents said, you can't be an artist. We forbid you, but it was more like, I don't know. I just was always pushed towards, being an attorney or being a doctor. So anyway, I went to college. I went to BYU, which it was very difficult to get into for me. I got the worst grades in my entire family. So I was more of a B student. I think I got 1 C in biology, and that was a big deal. That was an awful day for me to bring home that report card. But I got in trouble quite a bit in class. I'd get detention and things like that. Whereas the rest of my family, they were all pretty straight and narrow. Not to say that I'm very rebellious because, I got a C and I got some B's and detention a few times, you know what I mean? But for my family, it was definitely, the most rebellious, I'd say. Anyway, so I took the PACT because you had to have a 27, I think was the average to get to BYU. And I did really bad on it. And so I had to take night classes to get better. And I took the ACT 3 times. I finally got a 28 on it. So long story short, I got accepted to BYU, but it was very difficult. And then when I got accepted to BYU, 2 weeks before I was supposed to go, I got kicked out because before I even had attended the college, because I went and talked to an ecclesiastical leader in the Mormon church, and I was deemed to be not worthy to go because I'd been having a sexual relationship with my girlfriend of 4 years during high school, who had kind of hid it from my family. I know that I'm kind of giving you a lot of preface to this, but it
No,
makes
this is
sense
great.
when I get to it. Okay, so yeah, I got kicked out of BYU. Basically, I had to go home and tell my mom, hey, I can no longer go to BYU. I had to tell my roommate, who we bought our housing and done all that stuff that you do, and I had to tell him that, hey, you got to find a different roommate, which he was actually super upset about, because then he got randomly placed with somebody who I think was a bit of a bit of a piece of work. So it turned my life upside down. I stayed home and I went to UNLV. I lived at my parents' house and did a year of like what the Mormon church would call like the repentance process. It's where I had to meet with my bishop every couple of weeks and check in. It was a really difficult time period for me. I fell into a really deep depression. I felt really dirty and like I had, been done wrong. And it was like the whole Mormon community, my friends all found out about it. And I don't know, it was really a awful, shaming experience for me that I would never want any other person ever go through. But anyway, so I ended up reapplying for BYU after I had then been deemed clean after a year of repentance process, and got reaccepted, went to BYU. So it was really a difficult process to get into BYU. And so I really want to make that clear, because then you'll understand why it was such a difficult process for me to decide to drop out of BYU. So I then went on a mission, which BYU allows you to like leave for 2 years, which is a Mormon mission is 2 years long. And that was a whole experience in itself that I won't get into unless you want to get into it later. But so 2 years on a mission, and then I came home. And once I got home, so then I was 21, because you go on a mission when you're 19. So I went to 1 semester of BYU before I went on my mission. And then I also went to 1 semester of UNLV before that. On my mission, came home, and went to a year of school at BYU. So at this point, I think I was a junior in college. And I just was not enjoying any of my classes in school, other than like my PE classes. And I was in an aerobics class. I actually really loved aerobics. It was amazing. Yeah, so I did that. And on the side, I started a band. And we entered the BYU Battle of the Bands. And I called the band Imagine Dragons. I remember I came up with it in my biology class. I actually had a different name that I came up with, and then made it into an anagram and switched the letters around and made it Imagine Dragons, just because I'm super nerdy. So we entered the BYU Battle of the Bands, and we actually won, which was really rad. We were really terrible, though. I'm being honest with you. We were so terrible. And so I guess the competition must have been pretty awful. And I hate to put the other people on blast like that, but I think they would all agree, looking back, that it was a poor Battle of the Bands. So yeah, and the band, and at that time, the band was very different than it is now. The lineup was different, and the music we played was like very different. It was folk driven, opposed to what Imagine Dragons is now. But that decision, just to that point, was easy, because it wasn't all or nothing. It was just a band on the side, and it wasn't seen as a career. The really difficult decision for me, and the difficult conversations that I had to have with my parents, came when I told them, hey, I want to drop out of school, move to Vegas, and really start Imagine Dragons full time as a career.
How did that moment surface? So there was this true tipping point of, no, I think I am wanting to shed this collegiate kind of, path that you struggled in and had to really sacrifice a lot to even get on. And then you decided to go and pursue music full time. What happened to make you realize that needed to happen?
That's a good question. So, my entire life basically had been based around music. I started taking piano lessons when I was 6 years old. I took piano lessons for 10 years, from 6 to 16. I took drum lessons for 2 years, from the age of 12 to 14. And I also played saxophone in middle school for the 3 years. And in the jazz band, I played tenor saxophone. And so instruments were a big part of my life. And then when I got into high school, I taught myself to play guitar. growing up, all my older brothers played in like high school bands and garage bands, and then we had a family band kind of that we played. So music was really a huge part of my life. And then when I entered middle school, I hated middle school. I thought it was the most miserable time. Everybody was just ugly to each other. And it just, I don't know. Everything about middle school was terrible to me. I wouldn't say I was bullied, but there were definitely like a few bullies at school I was afraid of. And so I'd change my route to class. I remember being like having to take long way to different classes because there was a couple kids I was afraid of. It was a really miserable time for me. And so I turned to music. I went home and I started to write songs, and I stole my brother's microphone and learned how to use this program called Cakewalk, which was like the OG Logic. Mm-hmm. So it was like the original, before a garage band, So yeah, I taught myself to use Cakewalk and started to record like songs, really sad songs, into my computer, our family computer. And I would just wait till my brothers were gone, and like I said, I'd steal his microphone and use his program. And yeah, I remember the first song I wrote was called All by Himself. And it was this, I was just this angsty kid going through puberty and talking about my woes of being in this middle class house with wonderful parents. And, I had like such a great life, but like any kid, I was complaining. So yeah, I wrote this song, and it really brought me the most joy I had ever maybe experienced in my life. The process of there being nothing and then layering my voice and picking at a guitar, which I couldn't play well at the time, and then seeing the end result and being able to listen in these headphones and mix it and put reverb. It was just such an exciting process to me. And then to listen to it, the expression of it really fulfilled me. And it made me feel like I had expressed something that I couldn't express to my mom and dad or to any of my brothers, which is that I felt like an outcast. And I felt, sad about how I looked. I hated how I looked. I had a huge gap in my teeth. I wore these big, chunky glasses this was before hipsters, so glasses were not cool when I was in 6th grade. Mm-hmm. And on top of it, I was really lanky and just had a ton of acne and had an expander in my mouth where you had to take the key, and you make your gap much bigger. I swear I had like half an inch gap between my two front teeth. And so, yeah, it was just like I was like any kid going through puberty. And so I turned to music, and it brought me a great deal of joy. So I continued to do that all through middle school, through high school, wrote hundreds and hundreds of these songs that I really didn't show to anybody other than my dad, because I was embarrassed about what people would think of the music. But my dad was always just loved it. From the second I showed him, I didn't show him the first song, but maybe like 3 songs in, one day I pulled my dad aside, and because we always shared music together, and I showed him the song, and he was so proud of me. And he said, whether he was lying or not, he said he loved the song. And that really pushed me to do that, to continue to write music. By the time college rolled around, in reflecting on my life, I realized, wow, I never enjoyed my math class. I never enjoyed science. I really enjoyed English, but I enjoyed English because I liked to read, and I liked the idea of creating a story or writing, a short poem, or, I enjoyed that creating process. So when it came time to say, okay, what's my career going to be? I really thought, I took an accounting class. I tried so many different things, and I hated them all. I just thought they were really boring, to be honest with you. And it showed in how much effort I put into it. I just couldn't commit time to it without it being work. So then I told my mom, look, Mom, I really hate the idea of being a lawyer. I don't want to be a lawyer. And to be honest with you, doctor, I don't think I'll be a doctor either, because it's so much schooling, and yeah, maybe it'd be fun to do like surgery or something like that, but it still just seemed dull to me. And then I got to the point where I said, okay, I'm going to be in the FBI, only because I thought it sounded exciting. And so I went to the FBI came to BYU and put on like a seminar or something, and I attended that. And so then I called my mom and I said, okay, Mom, this is what I think I'm going to do. And my mom said, okay, but let me ask you a question. If you were faced with the fact where you had to point a gun at someone and pull the trigger and you killed someone, could you live with that? And it was,
Darn it.
yeah, and I had never thought about that, to be honest. I was like, oh, be in the FBI, it'll be exciting, it'll be fun. And just, by the way, interrupt me at any time if you want, because I don't know if I'm over talking. You want to ask more
this is
questions.
awesome.
Okay.
I had no idea that FBI was really, and knowing too that you're all a bit sci-fi kind of fans.
I love sci-fi.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Dan. We tackle the most taboo topics on the Why Not Now show. Oftentimes, you're hearing guests share things they've never shared before. In the spirit of things we don't typically talk about, you should know that the Why Not Now show is supported by Poo-Pourri. Yep, the original before you go toilet spray. It's magic. My friends at Poo-Pourri have literally taken the smell out of you-know-what. This pure blend of essential oils stops bathroom odor before it begins. Visit poopourri.com, and Why Not Now listeners get 20% off with code Why Not Now. That's all one word. So here you are. You gave college a red hot go. You truly did a lot to actually even be there. And then, and you just said, no, you know what? It just doesn't light me up. And you head back to Vegas. And what year was this? Because you started in the band in 2008, right?
Yeah, 2008, 2009. So this was probably 2009, I would guess. Maybe. Yeah, probably 2009. So then I decided, okay, I can't be in the FBI because I don't think I could shoot somebody. Like, let alone I couldn't even hunt. Like, the thought of like shooting a squirrel or something like makes me sick to my stomach. Like, I just couldn't do it. So then I decided, okay, I don't know what else to do. Then music. It's all I had ever done. So I called my mom and I told her, hey, Mom, we had this real, come to the table where I reflected on my life with my mom and said, this is all I'm good at. It's all that makes me happy. If I don't give this a real proper go, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. And I'll be some guy working a job that I hate. And I just didn't want to do it. So my mom was very, she would even say she was very, what's the correct word without throwing her under the bus? She was very apprehensive about me pursuing music. But with that being said, I kind of forced her hand on it and was like, if you're my mom and you love me and you support me, you need to let me do this. So she said, okay, well, why don't you just start by deferring a semester? So I deferred a semester at BYU. I moved to Vegas. The band and I, there were a couple transitions in the band. Like, a couple people said, okay, I want to stay in school, or I don't, I'm not looking to pursue a band as a career. So some people dropped out and we brought in other people. So the lineup changed a bit. We moved to Vegas. We rented a very small house that was 2 blocks away from my birth home. And it was just this tiny house. And we started practicing 8 hours a day. We all decided if we were going to do music, we were going to prove that we weren't going to be like the lazy musician dude who's just starts a band to get girls and doesn't want to work a job and wants to live at home with their parents. Like, all those preconceived notions about a musician, we wanted to break all those stereotypes. So we said, we're going to practice 8 hours a day. We're all going to wake up at 9 a.m. and we're going to treat this like a job and do what we love, which is music. And so we went to the hotels, literally drove, to the hotel, asked to meet with whoever the booking agent was for the small stages at the hotels, got turned down by a bunch of people, but eventually met some people who said, okay, I'll let you play on our hotel at, from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. That's your slot. You get 6 hours. We'll pay you like $500 for 6 hours for us to split, which was nothing for 6 hours of work for 5 people. At the time, it was 5 people in the band. But we were able to somehow pay rent and, get enough ramen for us all to eat and survive. And we said yes to every single gig from that day on. So we opened for a mime at a mall, and we played, little park gigs here and there, and we played every hotel we could possibly get into. So we just got into the grind. And on top of it, then we were continuing to practice and write songs every day, 8 hours. And we started to grow a bit of a fan base in Vegas. And then we started to pull, our first gig, I think we our first our own gig, not, you know, a half cover show, half original, which is what the hotels agreed to. We had to do half covers and half original. So we learned, like, you know, 200 cover songs.
Wow. Yeah, which to a singer-songwriter, that can be kind of painful, right? Having to
Oh
do
man,
that.
yeah, it was. But on the same note, I think it really taught us a lot, and it taught me as a songwriter. You know, you had to, in order to learn a song, you have to, you know, you have to learn every bit of it, and you kind of realize the songwriting process that individual went through to some degree. And so I think as a songwriter, it really helped. And we got to pick the songs, so we picked, you know, all the songs of bands that we looked up to and we were influenced by, and you kind of study. You know, I would recommend it, honestly, for any band. It was miserable, and I never want to go back and do it again, to be honest with you, just because 6-hour gigs, especially as a vocalist, was super taxing. But with that being said, it was really good for all of us because we got those 10,000 hours together pretty quick as a band.
It's kind of like your real college almost, right? Studying and learning, and your version of academia. And
totally.
So I moved to Vegas to be a part of the Downtown Project in 2012, and right away I was able to see you perform. I can't remember the name of the venue. It was pretty small, and then kind of witnessed this catapult, right? And this huge, as Night Visions then came out, and seeing you headline at Life is Beautiful. And I think it's cool, though, that you really touch on this period beforehand, because it wasn't an overnight success for you guys. And you started and you had that grind. You're playing in these Vegas casino lounges and just hungry. And a lot of people who listen to this show and they're thinking about their own why not now moments, sometimes I hear feedback of, well, you know, I'm not a superstar, I'm not a rock star, I'm not a so-and-so, so I can't relate. But you have to start somewhere. And to the fan that kind of jumped on in the 2011-12, they may not know that story. And I think it's really important because I would almost use the phrase smoke and mirrors, but there is a grind and a learning curve that you could have easily given up in those 3-4 years before you really kind of came on to the mainstream.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, you know, I had failed at being a musician since I was, I want to say 15 or 16, really, in some regards, as far as people would see. Like, I started my own MySpace when MySpace was in, and I hustled, and I tried to message people to get this wasn't like, you know, I didn't like start a band for the first time in college, and then it took off. I had been in bands before that, in high school, and I don't want to say I had failed, but, you know, I hadn't made a career out of being a musician. It wasn't paying any bills for me. You know what I mean? I had to work a job in high school to make money. My band wasn't making money. And so, yeah, I mean, there were years and years of preparation to get me to a spot where, you know, I had enough understanding of the music industry and enough discipline with music to have any shot at it at all. So, yeah, I think, you know, nothing is ever an overnight success when it comes to music. I mean, you know what? I take that back. For me, it wasn't, but maybe there are some people who are like, you know what? I'm going to learn how to be a musician today. And then they made a song on GarageBand and it became viral and then their career took off. Like, I'm sure there's got to be some of those people in this day and age, but for the most part, at least for me, you know, it was definitely not some overnight thing.
Your new album, Evolve, and my new all-time favorite song of yours is Thunder. And I've thought a lot about this song and the lyrics, and some of the lyrics are fairly literal, or descriptive enough to where, okay, you kind of get what it means. And I might be reading too much into it, but are there any kind of metaphorical meanings behind Thunder that connects your from Night Visions to Smoke and Mirrors to Evolve?
Yeah, definitely. Not only is Thunder kind of a reflection of my youth and what got me into music, and how my drive came through, I don't know, feeling like an outcast, like I said. Like, if I wouldn't have turned to music if it wasn't for middle school, because it was such a terrible time period that it's kind of what got me through it. But it definitely also alludes to what this process has been like. Even when I started the band, I can't tell you how many times I would have like somebody, like I'd have a friend at my house and he'd be like, I was over at someone else's house and they were all laughing about this band that you started. I mean, the name Imagine Dragons now it sounds like a band name, but let me just tell you before your band is famous, what your band name is, it didn't sound like a cool band name for sure. And there were many of there were a lot of people who doubted, the band in the beginning. Even my close friends, like I said, I would have I'd have a friend over at my house and he'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you. I was with a couple people yesterday and they're all making fun of this band that you've started called Imagine Dragons. Like, what's with the name? And like, it was just like, I don't want to say they were like, of course my like true close friends were supportive, but there was some people who thought, what's Dan doing with his band? And they're in college and they're getting their degrees and they're starting their careers. And here I was dropping out of college and starting this band, and with a name that was very unique and strange. And so, yeah, there were definitely people who doubted the band for sure. And there's a small part of me, that a year later when the band was playing arenas, when I would get a text message from some old friend who would say, hey, I'm coming out to your show. I want to come out to your show. Can you put me on the guest list? And I want to bring out my friends. And I was like, I know that you didn't support it. You weren't like with it. You thought you were one of the people that were laughing at my band like, a year ago. So there was a little bitterness in some regards there. Over the years, I've come to be able to let go of, and it's like just funny to me. But definitely in the beginning, there were moments where I was a little bit like, no, I don't really want to put you on the guest list for this because you never came to any of the early shows, and I happen to know from a close friend of mine that you thought my band was a joke when we started it. So there's also I'm sure a lot of musicians deal with a little bit of that when things happen.
Sure, absolutely, and I just look at the trajectory, and when you're mainstream and 2012-ish, and now all of a sudden kind of top of the charts, and I imagine it's that spotlight and it's fairly outward. It's flashy, it's cool. You've got this huge percussion going on, and everything is just amazing. And I think I'm making this up in my own mind, but I guess that's what music kind of is, as you translate it for yourself. But then your second big album was, or full album was Smoke and Mirrors. And I just think about the literal meaning of smoke and mirrors and how then you get to evolve and wonder, was lightning kind of more of the night visions? And then you're at that more mature internal wisdom now, I wonder, where you can kind of shake the earth and it's coming from a place of just a different place with more experience. And so it's, sure. Yeah. And I think about that actually with myself even and friends, and how, being that young gun and then evolving into maybe being even humbled a bit, and then evolving into your real strength and your real power. And just absolutely love the song and what you've done with your videos. And it's magic. It's pretty cool to see the art and creativity. So props, major props.
Thank
Absolutely.
You so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You're totally right on with that. In a lot of ways, honestly, I just like the idea of lightning before thunder. It's it's not the most profound thing, and I'm sure it's been said a million times before, but I think it's a really beautiful concept that, you see lightning before you hear its roar. It's always like, you see the lightning and then, you wait 10 seconds or something and you hear this thunderous roar. And even though the lightning is a beautiful visual thing, the thunder is really what scares you and shakes you. And so I loved the concept of that, and I felt in a lot of ways that Imagine Dragons is the thunder of what was the lightning when I was a young kid writing these songs. It was that was all preparatory for what Imagine Dragons is, and the angst of the band. I really have always written from a place of angst. I've never been inspired to write music about. I don't think I've ever written a song that was like, I'm at a party hanging with my friends and we're all popping bottles. You know what I mean? It's like that is never. I have no inspiration from that. And also, I probably just don't listen to music. You know, that's like typically like. The music I grew up on was the music of like Cat Stevens and Paul Simon and Harry Nelson and these songwriters that really wrote from an emotional place. You know, that for me was, not to say I didn't get down to a little like, I don't know, like I remember I bought like 50 Cent's album back in the day. I can't even remember it was like the album that he broke out, his like breakout role. And you know, it was like, you know, kind of a party album, and I get down with that, but it's just not the kind of music that I'm inspired to write. Yeah, so the angst of my childhood is, you know, and the angst of life, and I've dealt with depression for many years. I've talked about that quite a bit, but if it all finds its way into the music, and I think that it all was kind of the initial lightning that is now, you know, Imagine Dragons.
Amazing. And I've heard you say that this last year has been one of, if not the healthiest kind of year of your life, and having dealt with darkness and depression and even a bit of a spiritual crisis. What do you attribute the light and kind of brightness of this last year being? What are some of the factors that you think have led into that?
I would say honesty. And I've thought about this a lot, actually, because I've really been afraid that, you know, anybody who deals with depression or, you know, any sort of mental diagnosis, I think that you live almost in fear of the come down. Like when I'm happy for a prolonged period, I'm always thinking, oh, I'm about to fall into a deep depression. It must be coming because this isn't going to last longer than, you know, a week or a month but, you know, I've really been in a healthy spot for over a year now. And that is the first time that I've had this length without going into like falling into a bout of depression in, you know, I don't know, like 10 years maybe. Because I really started dealing with depression when I was, heavily dealing with it when I was, like I said, like 18 or 19. It was that whole period of, I feel like the first time I really fell into a long period of depression, it was when I got kicked out of BYU and went to UNLV. And when I say depression, for me, it's not, there's a lot of people who maybe have not dealt with depression and they think, oh, depression means you're sad. That's really not for me what depression means. For me, depression is a grayness and a numbness, and you don't like, I have no excitement towards things that would generally bring me excitement. I have a hard time listening. I fade in and out of conversation, and I'm very distracted, and there's like a grayness, and that, you know, until I went and saw a therapist, I thought that was normal for everybody, that, you know, at least, you know, yeah, I mean, I dealt with it definitely a bit in middle school, a bit in high school, but it was never longer than like, you know, a few weeks. But that, when I turned 19, or when I was 18, that was like a year, really. That whole time when I was home at BYU, at UNLV, I was just really, everything was gray and I was super depressed. But where was I going with this? I'm sorry. I'm so
no, it's okay. It's okay. So this last year, and you said honesty was what you really kind of attribute
honesty.
this.
I'm so sorry.
This,
okay.
yeah.
Honesty. Thank you.
You're all good. All good. I'm tracking.
So this period of health, I attribute to honesty. I spent a lot of time with a really incredible therapist from France that really got me into this healthy place. And the way that I got here was finally realizing there were, you know, I'm an extroverted person on stage, but I can tell you that in my own life, I've really been an introvert in a lot of ways, and sometimes to my detriment. I really hold things in that sometimes need to be expressed. And one of those things was I dealt with a faith crisis really since I was young. I grew up in a really conservative, faithful Mormon family, and I dealt with feeling like I was the only one who doubted Mormonism since I was young, because my family didn't really talk about doubts. They only talked about, you know, their faith, really. And so I felt very alone in that. And then I even, you know, it wasn't just Mormonism. I really also doubted since I was young the existence of God. And so it went beyond just faith, religious faith. And that was a scary thing for me to hold on to, because I grew up in a really, like I said, I grew up in quite a bubble of religiousness. A lot of my best friends, they were all Mormon. And so I felt like I was the only one that had these doubts. And that was a scary thing for me. Because it made me feel like I had something wrong with me, or that God wasn't speaking to me because I was unworthy, or something, you know what I mean? Or he didn't care about me. And why does everybody else feel like they're getting answers to their prayers when I feel like nobody is listening when I pray, and I feel no, anything in my body of emotion towards, religion and things like that. So that was something I held on to for many, many years. And having honesty about that actually was huge for me, getting to a point of saying, finding my own spiritual grounds and letting go of kind of fear of what my family would think, or fear of what my friends would think. Finding my own spiritual path was huge. And that was a great source of my depression, feeling lost, and also just trying to hold to the rod of what my family, like holding on to other people's testimonies and other people's belief systems. I needed to find my own sense of being. And also the band exploding was super overwhelming for me. Yeah. The whole aspect of fame and things like that, like it was just too much for me, and really spiraled me into kind of just a weird, heavy place. And Smoke and Mirrors was probably the most depressed I'd been in my entire life writing that record. And I was in the deepest state of depression I had ever been in, to the point where I now had gone and seen, been put on depression medication, which I had never done before. I had only seen therapists and just talked about, how I could improve. But so I went through that for a little bit, and then I got off medication because it was too scary for me. I felt like it was going to make it so I couldn't perform well, that it would make me feel like flatlined, and there was a whole thing with that. So anyway, one, honesty in my spirituality. Two, honesty with myself about what I wanted in life, and just being honest with letting myself do things for me and not just for my family or for other people. That was really important for me. I also I got to a healthy physical place where I was doing yoga multiple times a week. I got diagnosed with 2 diseases in the last 10 years, ulcerative colitis and ankylosing spondylitis. They're kind of related because they're autoimmune diseases, but that was really overwhelming for me, getting diagnosed with those 2 diseases and being upset, feeling like, why had I been dealt this awful card? And yeah, I think facing that on, getting to a healthy physical place, and then also a healthy mental place, and speaking out about it and becoming an advocate for, hopefully, I've had a lot of people reach out to me who also deal with depression, that, it just made me realize it's important to speak out about depression, because people hide that. They feel like it's a weakness to say that they, see a therapist or something. And really, that's a dangerous thing to hide our weaknesses. We live in the world of Instagram where you just show, your strengths and the beautiful moments of your life. But I think it's really important to also share, the heavy things in life, because it lets other people feel less alone in it. Sorry, I'm totally just chattering on, but
This is great. Thank you for your fierce honesty, not only just now, but also kind of listening and watching you grab the mic in a little bit of a different way for different causes and things you feel strongly about. And depression is huge. And to be willing to talk through that journey of coming to a point where your honesty has been what has helped you so much. And it's so needed and necessary. So I just thank you so much for talking about it and being willing to, because otherwise, like you said, you never really know what's going on. And most people, it's still a taboo topic, but it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be. Yeah, it really shouldn't be.
So why not now, in terms of the future? And here you are, touring. You have a full house of girls. You've got 4 women that you're with there, and in your family and growing family. And is there anything that you've been asking yourself, why not now, about, or that you feel you will soon?
Yeah. Really, the why not now of now or soon is really this documentary. I realized, one of the big realizations that I've had in the last couple of years is that sometimes if you are quiet about something or you are a pacifist about something, you actually are an activist for maybe something that you aren't. That sounds like, let me explain this in an easier way. So I have felt quite a bit of heaviness because I'm Mormon, and there are very few spotlight Mormons. And I just for the record, I still consider myself Mormon. You know, where my faith is as far as like my spiritual identity, it's really my own, and I would call myself a very unique Mormon. But there's parts of Mormonism that are cultural, that I hold on to, that are dear to me, and definitely dear to my family. All my family are very active Mormons. I am more of a unique Mormon. But so with that being said, when people think of Mormonism, they typically, who don't know a lot about Mormonism, they think of a few things. The most like pop culture things, which is one, polygamy, and two, so lots, most people think, oh, you have lots of wives or something like that. Or two, they think of Prop 8, because that was a big thing in the news where, Mormons kind of were seen as one of the most outspoken critics of gay marriage, and trying to, maybe critics of gay marriage is a tough way to put it, but that's kind of what it is. Mm-hmm. Mormons, put forth a lot of money in fighting gay marriage. And so those are typical things that people think of who don't know a lot about Mormonism, at least that I've seen when I sit down in different countries and talk to press. They say, oh, you're Mormon, so do you have a lot of wives? No, yeah, I don't have wives, and I don't have a lot of wives, and that was early on in the church, it's not practiced anymore. Oh, well, what about Prop 8? Well, yeah, Mormons did that. That's not what I stand for, but it's like, there's certain things that people think of when they think of Mormons. So long story short, I have gotten many emails throughout the years from fans or had conversation with people who said, hey, I am gay, or I'm, my brother is, gay. And so I think that, I enjoy your music, but it makes me sad that I know that you don't support me or my lifestyle. And hearing that made me realize that as being a spotlighted Mormon, I am not talking and not being an ally, a vocal ally. I then am kind of, as being a pacifist, I felt like I was being an activist for bigotry, kind of, if I were to be frank with you. And so for me, I really felt a deep burning desire to become a vocal ally, and a need to shed light on what was happening, what happens in Orthodox homes with, if two parents of an Orthodox religion have a child that comes to them and says, hey, I'm gay, that can often be a very difficult conversation and between the parents and their child. And I have a lot of friends who have gone through that, who were either Mormon and had to come out to their parents and felt so scared because within the wall of within Orthodox religion, being gay is seen as being a sin, and that leads to a child dealing with so much guilt when you're told that your most innate sense of being that you can't change is a sin. I can't even imagine the pain and the hardship of that. Even just me being told when I was 18 that it was sinful to, have sex with the girl who I love, that did a lot of damage to me. Like I said, it put me into a deep place of depression. And so from a young age to know that your most innate sense of being is sinful, to be told that, you're setting a child up for a really, really hard life. And, the suicide rate in Utah is extremely high. The number one reason for death among teens in Utah is suicide. And then if the child is LGBTQ, they're 8 times more likely to commit suicide if they're not accepted in their family or community. So there's a real problem going on within Utah and a lot of places of Orthodox faith where these children are taking their lives because they're told that their most innate sense of being is sinful. So long story short, And I'm so sorry that I'm stumbling over all my words explaining this to you, because it is so new for me. Like this is such a new project for me that this is like, one of the first times that I'm really speaking about this. So I'm still learning how to even express why this came up in my life and why I'm so passionate about it. But I'm trying to do my best
No,
here.
you're doing awesome, and thank you.
Yeah, so I decided to start this documentary, and I'm working with an incredible documentarian. I think is probably the correct word. Is that the correct word? I don't know. His
Sure.
name's Don Argot. He's an amazing director. I'll just say director. And we've been on this journey where we're meeting with, parents who have lost their child to suicide after they had come out to them as gay, and how and within a Orthodox community or Orthodox home, and how we can improve as a community so this doesn't happen. Obviously, I can't change church's doctrine or policies. I can disagree with them, but I can't change their doctrine. But hopefully, what this documentary will do is build awareness, at least within communities of faith, or just in the world, period, in general, that it is very harmful to teach your child that being gay is a sin. Basically, the facts show that if your child comes to you and says, "Hey, mom, I'm gay," and the parent says, "I love you, but that is a sin," just by saying that, you are basically making your child 8 times more likely to commit suicide. What parent would ever want that risk upon their child? And so then the parent is faced with a difficult question, which is, do you choose your faith or do you choose your child, basically, in that moment?
Wow.
Anyway, so it's a heavy topic, but it's one that needs to be it needs more light shed upon it. So we're doing this documentary. I'm also putting on a festival in Utah, August 26th, called Love Loud, that is about bringing the whole community together in one location to listen to music, eat food, but also to hear speakers from the LGBTQ community get up and talk about what we can do better as a community, especially within communities of Orthodox faith, to help our children feel loved and accepted. What does it mean to truly love and accept our LGBTQ youth? And so that conversation is really, I think, needs to be had. And that's what we're looking to do with the festival, and that's what I'm looking to do with this documentary.
Incredible. As I'm listening to you and you look at your scenario where you do have this huge spotlight and your roots as with Mormonism, but also I think your specific issue at hand is huge and you're tackling it and it's amazing, but it almost transcends to even a bigger layer, an umbrella of just any social issue that gets us out of our labels and bubbles a little bit more, because technically you've been labeled in the past, or your community has, and your religion, yet here you are saying, and you just said you still consider yourself Mormon and unique Mormon in your own version of what that means spiritually to you, but you are putting the spotlight on the fact that things are not black and white, and this could really apply to anything. And it's such a cool example of what you're doing and using your fame and your voice to hopefully encourage other people that have similar spotlights to maybe do something similar. And it could be about a different cause, but it's a pretty cool flip and leverage of, yet you haven't abandoned your roots in the meantime. And it's pretty innovative and progressive, and it's just props to you. It's really cool.
Thanks. The thing that I feel like I've been learning the most in this past year of my life, I just turned 30, so I'm entering this new phase of my life. But the thing that I feel like I've learned most is really that it's a dangerous game to feel like you have to take a path, that you have to follow some course that has already been tread. I think that for some people, the comfortability in that, I understand it, and I especially understand it because that's how I spent the majority of my life, is following a path. I've actually found that the greatest joy and fulfillment in life comes from as cliche as it sounds, getting off the path and forging your own way. And so for me, that's what I've been trying to do over the past year. And it's been wonderful. It's been enlightening. It's been difficult at times because I've had to have difficult conversations with people I love, with my family. Mm-hmm. But it's also been the most rewarding because it's brought me closer with the people that I love, or severed relationships that maybe needed to be severed. And so for me, really what I believe and how I want to live the rest of my life is just solely following my heart and my intuition. And of course, I'm not saying, don't listen to advice from other people and listen to their experiences. But at the end of the day, I'm going to always only forge the path that I deem to be correct, period, end of story, for better or for worse. And I think it's really been an important lesson for me to learn. Because like I said, and it's sad, I'm sad a little bit that it took me till the age of, 29 or 30 to learn that lesson. But, hopefully it will lead to a fruitful, additional 30, hopefully 50 years or something.
Absolutely. And some people never really come to that realization. So I think you're actually really ahead of the game. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and it's neat to hear the backstory, because a lot of people, they just see you on stage, and it just brings that much more meaning to your art and your creativity. So thank you so much for coming on the show, and I look forward to watching you continue to create and evolve. And I just want to thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for being patient with my scrambled mind, but I've really enjoyed this as well. And yeah, keep doing great work, and I hope to talk again soon.
Thanks so much, Dan. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the show. Hit me up on social media to let me know what you think. I'm at Amy Jo Martin on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I want to hear your Why Not Now moments so I can share them on the show. Just send me a note to whynotnow@amyjomartin.com. For show notes and other offers, you can visit amyjomartin.com/whynotnow. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for my email newsletter for exclusive content and announcements. A big thanks to Rock Salt Music for all of the tunes by the talented John Coggins, and of course a hat tip to Richard Brewer for editing and producing the show. I'll see you next time, and until then, why not now?